In the biomedical model, fever is an elevation of body temperature as a response of the organism, generally associated with infections, inflammation, or immunological processes. It is a defense mechanism, an attempt by the body to restore equilibrium. But from the FARO approach, fever is not simply a physiological finding. It is understood as a process that can be interpreted on multiple levels: biological, psychological, energetic, relational, and existential. From Hamer's biology of meaning perspective, fever often appears during the resolution of certain biological conflicts. After a phase of sustained stress, the organism enters a repair phase. Fever can be interpreted as part of that process: activation, tissue repair, inflammatory response. It is not the conflict itself, but rather the phase in which the body attempts to resolve it. In FARO, this is not applied as a universal rule. Instead, the individual clinical context of the client is always investigated. From Jung's perspective, fever can be interpreted symbolically as an increase in psychic intensity. Something that was contained, repressed, or unintegrated emerges. The fever heats up the system. It can represent emotional intensity, unresolved internal conflicts, or the eruption of unconscious content. Here the concept of the shadow appears, denied aspects of the psyche seeking integration. In some cases, the fever accompanies processes where what has been repressed can no longer remain hidden. From an integral perspective, fever does not belong to a single level. It is an observable biological process, a subjective experience, a phenomenon influenced by relationships, and an event conditioned by the environment. The AQL model allows us to understand that fever must be interpreted in all quadrants. Reducing it solely to infection or solely to emotion is an oversimplification. Intervention requires integrating levels of consciousness and context. In traditional Chinese medicine, fever is associated with internal heat or invasion by pathogenic factors: heat, wind heat. It can imply excess yang, agitation of qi, or impairment of shen. From a Taoist perspective, fever is a manifestation of imbalance in the yin-yang dynamic. Excess heat, unregulated movement, loss of harmony. But it can also represent a process of transformation, heat as a force that changes the state of the system. Shadow work, individual and collective. Fever can be understood, in certain contexts, as an intensification of the system that accompanies processes of confrontation with the shadow. On an individual level, unrecognized emotions, internal conflicts, and repressed content. On a collective level, social stress, pressured contexts, and cultural crises. The body is not separate from its environment. Working with the shadow involves recognizing what has been denied, naming what has gone unsaid, and integrating what has been rejected. It is not about automatically symbolizing the fever, but about rigorously asking clinical questions. Humanizing the symptom. Fever is not a mistake of the body. It is a response. The problem arises when it is experienced only as something to be suppressed, without understanding its function. Humanizing the symptom involves not trivializing it, not dramatizing it, understanding it in its context, and accompanying the patient without reducing them to a number or diagnosis. FARO clinical intervention. Biological level, clinical evaluation, detection of infectious or inflammatory causes, hydration, rest, follow-up. Level of consciousness. Understanding the context in which it appears, what was happening before the episode. Psychosomatic level. Exploring recent emotional states, without forcing interpretations. Energetic level. TCM and Taoism regulating heat, harmonizing qi, protecting the shen. Relational level. Evaluating the environment with family or social stress. Systemic level. Living conditions, access to care, healthcare context. Existential level. Listening to the process, allowing what emerges without imposing meaning. FARO learning. Not every symptom should be interpreted, but every symptom should be understood in its context. FARO phrase. The body doesn't make mistakes. It responds based on the logic it has available. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Leave a comment if you'd like. Tell me where you're watching from if you're a healthcare professional and if you'd like to be a FARO coach. Share this video to raise collective awareness. Study with ESSI, the FARO Integral Method. Learn science with awareness because in health, knowledge isn't neutral, it's vital.